Hello, everyone. Welcome to this ACM-W Europe womENcourage 2015 celebration of women in computing. We are about 200 people registered for this event, coming from 28 countries in Europe and beyond. And welcome also to those seeing us online today. We are all from different backgrounds, cultures, and generations, and all of us interested in celebrating the work of women in computing. Look around you and take a chance to meet the person next to you. We're all different and yet so similar. In her TED Talk, Dame Stephanie Shirley says that you can tell the shape of an ambitious woman's head. You can tell that a woman is ambitious by the shape of her head, because it's flat by being patted patronizingly so often. So if this is true, this room is full of flattened heads. Because if you're here, regardless of your gender, you are already proving that you are ambitious, that you want to contribute to a community, and that you want to move things forward. It means simply that you're a womENcourager. Welcome to womENcourage 2015, and welcome to Uppsala University. At the entrance at this door, you can read in Swedish the university's motto: "Thinking freely is big, but thinking right is greater." In this building is used for many different events, including concerts and important ceremonies. And these 2 days, we will also be celebrating something really big. So yes, celebrating. What are we celebrating? You have already mentioned different ideas. We have received many emails from you. And one example is what Maria Forsbeck mentions. She says, "For me, the IT industry is a fantastic place where you get to work with fabulous and creative things. I always wish for more celebration on the awesome things women do in this industry, and through that, foster change and a better working environment for all." So that's what we're doing today. An article in the CAT says, "A good workplace is one in which you can look around and see versions of yourself in 5 years from now or 10. And for me, that is womENcourage. An opportunity to meet peers, younger and older, with different levels of experience, role models, people who make you grow as a person." And you can see this diversity in the people who got together to organize this celebration. womENcourage is the result of the work of a wonderful team. We are students, academics, professionals in industry from all areas of computing from many different countries. I would like all members of this team that are here today to stand up. All these people that are not standing up yet, don't be shy. Up. They have been working very hard for 1.5 years to make womENcourage happen, so thank you very much for all your hard work. Thank you also to our wonderful sponsors, ACM, ACM-W, and Uppsala University, and to our supporters, Google, Indria, Oracle, Bloomberg, Cisco, Facebook, IR Systems, FreeBSD, Informatics Europe, Intel, and Microsoft. Their support made possible the student scholarships. That's an initiative that brings to our celebration students who couldn't have attended otherwise. At the career fair yesterday, you met some of their representatives, while also seeing the great posters of our students. I hope you enjoyed it. It was very interesting and definitely a great chance to build your future. A special mention to all men in the room, and online as well. Anyone advocating for women in computing faces challenges, and our men allies are no exception. They stand up for us, they support us, and these men are here because they want to learn how to better support women in computing, and we all know this is not always an easy task. I am very glad that our definition of womENcourager is not limited to a particular gender. So what do we have for these days? You have 2 ways of knowing more about the activities in the program: by using the celebration app, or the printed copy that you haven't maybe have picked already, or it's on the registration desk otherwise. You have a link to the app there. We have the papers track with many interesting presentations from different areas of computing. We have the industry talks where you can learn more about these organizations. We have very popular workshops with only a few spots left. And there are lots of opportunities for discussion. We have panels with professionals from both industry and academia ready to get your questions. And we also have a lot of discussion during the unconference and case studies, which sounds like something new for many of us. So what is this? The case studies are discussions on challenging scenarios in which you may find yourself during your studies and career. They facilitate a guided discussion on how to constructively solve this challenge. We have topics targeted both at students and professionals in different settings. And as you can see in the program, it says multiple sessions. That means that volunteers will be at this room and we'll organize participants in different rooms and groups. So if you're participating in the case studies, please be here at the scheduled time. The unconference has a similar format with an important difference. It is you who decides what scenarios or topics will be discussed. It is a great opportunity to get involved in discussing topics that you find really important, share your thoughts, and exchange ideas with other attendees. We are open to any subjects that you may think are interesting, so from anything in computing to social and career questions. So how can you suggest a topic to be discussed in the conference? Until the end of today, you have a chance to do so by writing your suggestion on a sticky note on the table and board outside this room. And we will collect those suggestions, and the most popular ones will be selected for the conference sessions tomorrow. Drop us a hint on what you would like to discuss or share with participants, and you can also add new aspects or expand the subjects that are already on the table. If you see that a topic you want to discuss was already suggested by someone else, don't hesitate to put your vote to that on the table as well. Let us know what you would like to talk about. And now that I mentioned talking, if you're using social media to talk about womENcourage, you can use the hashtag womENcourage2015 and follow the conversation on different social networks. If you haven't done so, you can get Wi-Fi access again at the registration desk. And in social media, we will post pictures during and after the event, as we did last year. That was the first womENcourage in Manchester in the UK. This is the second womENcourage, and it has been created by building not only on the great work of the first edition, but also on the very useful feedback from the participants in Manchester. This is why it is important that this year you give us feedback too. So how do you experience womENcourage? What suggestions do you have? We have feedback forms for every session, and you can access them in the respective pages of the sessions on the website. So at the end of the event, or perhaps even tonight, you can contribute to the next womENcourage already by telling us what you think. Do you think there is a need for more women in computing? Or do you feel that the value of women's technical contributions should be recognized? Do you think that women should be encouraged to stay in computing and make a difference? And more important, if so, how can you start making a difference? So besides participating in the activities in the program, you can take a moment to sit down on the red chair. We brought the Sit With Me campaign to womENcourage, and we welcome you to validate and recognize the important role women play in creating future technology. So in order to get involved, you just have to come and sit on the red chair that you will find outside. That is the symbol of the campaign. And you just need to tell us your story and why you think women in technology are important. So come along and sit down with us to take a stand. Irina, I don't know if she's here. Yeah, that's Irina. She will take your picture so that your experience is shared with the world. And at any point of the celebration, you will find volunteers. They are wearing the t-shirts that you have probably seen already, like the one I'm wearing, or similar design in black. Once again, thank you all very much for donating your time during the event to make womENcourage possible. We have a code of conduct for the celebration that you saw during your registration online, and that all participants are expected to follow. This code was created with the goal of having a comfortable and safe for all atmosphere. So if you see this code being broken or are in need of any kind of help, please contact our volunteers. Volunteers are also the ones giving you information such as this. It is not allowed to bring food or drinks inside the rooms in this building, so please use only the hall when you're drinking or eating. We have been mentioning the ACM, but we haven't really explained yet what this organization is or does. And womENcourage is just an example of the many events that the ACM supports and organizes, and an organization team is a small sample of the large group of volunteers that donate their time to this cause. Today we have with us one of the most committed ACM volunteers to be found, Alexander Wolf, professor in the Department of Computing at Imperial College London in the UK. Professor Wolf has donated his time to ACM by serving in many roles. To name a few, he currently is a member of the ACM Europe Council and a participant in the ACM Distinguished Speakers Program, or DSP. This has made him gain a very deep understanding of the organization. And on top of that, he is an enthusiastic advocate for women in computing, this clearly showing in his contribution to the running of ACM. So please join me in welcoming to the stage the ACM President, Alexander Wolf.
Thank you, Virginia, for that really inspiring introduction to this event. I suppose it's fair to say that we wouldn't be here at all if there wasn't a problem in our community. But I want to make sure that we, of course, all understand that this is not a women's problem, right? This is a community problem. And it takes everyone to solve this problem. And to some extent, I'm embarrassed to say, you know, I'm one of those old males that dominate our community, and but I feel a lot of responsibility to change that. My PhD advisor was a woman, and she was the first woman in her department, and I watched her as a young professor. She was an assistant professor, go through a lot of, let's say, extra effort to achieve what she has achieved, and she's now a very prominent professor. She became a dean. She's now just retired. But she has always inspired me, not just with respect to the role of women in computing, but just in general for being a person in computing. And that includes volunteering for your community and contributing to your community. So I was very pleased to be invited here to help welcome you and get the opportunity to talk to you a little bit about ACM and what ACM does for the community. So if you will indulge me in a PowerPoint presentation. ACM is recognized as the oldest and largest international society of individual computer scientists, engineers, and students. You do hear a lot about societies that are, in a sense, groups of organizations. This is a group of individuals. And as such, it is focused on the members of the society. Its activities are driven by the volunteers. And there is a staff that, in a sense, facilitates those activities. The mission of ACM is really to empower individuals. And what that means is to empower them to advance computing, both scientifically and technically, and also as a profession. There are currently 112,000 members worldwide. This number is growing. And interestingly, if we think about how many people we touch as a society, I'm not talking about computing. Obviously, computing has touched, you know, billions of people. But as a professional society, we touch on approximately 3 million people who are either engaged in or affected by our activities. Now, for those of you familiar with ACM, you'll know that it is really the pinnacle of technical excellence, technical stewardship. And what this means is that ACM sponsors, at least what I consider, and I think many people consider it to be the most prestigious professional meetings in the community. It's also, of course, a publisher. And when people think of the ACM, they often just think of that publishing arm, but it is a significant part of what it means to provide stewardship for the community. So in 2014, I should say, 2014, ACM produced quite a volume, helped the community produce quite a volume of technical material. In fact, in 2014, there were over 21,000 individual papers or articles that ACM published on behalf of the community. And that's a tremendous amount, and it represents nearly 9% more over and above what was published in 2013. So we know that computing is growing, and this is certainly reflected in how much activity there is just in the publishing. But ACM is so much more than just this, this set of conferences, this set of publications. And in fact, what I really appreciate about ACM, and the reason that I am a member of ACM, is for what we call its good works. And the good works are activities that are initiated by ACM volunteers for the betterment of the technical community, of course, but also of the public at large. And I would say that this event is an example of exactly that kind of attitude that the volunteers have. And I very much appreciate all of the effort that went into this event and organizing this event, largely by volunteers, people giving of their time. The areas that we work in are, of course, technical and scientific, but also educational and societal. And so let me give you a little overview of that. The special interest groups might also be something you're aware of. This is where the technical communities can gather in some sense and organize themselves around the technical agenda that is appropriate to them. So there are 37 of these special interest groups that cover the range of computing. There are also regional councils, which I'll talk a little bit more about the one in Europe, but the idea here is that ACM is a large international organization, but not one size that fits all. And in fact, we need to be able to tailor what those activities are that ACM does to the particular issues and concerns and interests of particular regions. And we're doing this in a number of areas. We also have local and regional chapters, or SIG chapters, and this is an opportunity for people who are in a physically local context to get together and help promote their own ideas, also help build community in their local area. I hope that you're part of such a local chapter somewhere, perhaps at your university or perhaps in your city. I'm the faculty advisor for the Imperial College local chapter, and there we have a lot of very interesting activities that are in particular oriented towards the advanced students. Virginia mentioned the Distinguished Speakers Program. This is a way for groups, usually chapters, to bring in people from around the world to speak at their chapter event. And there are quite a few members of this Distinguished Speakers Program, but again, ACM will subsidize this visits by distinguished speakers to your local communities. So it's a great reason to start a chapter in your university or in your city. Not everything that ACM does is oriented towards academics and to research, but there's of course also a big emphasis on the practitioner. In fact, 60% of the members of ACM are practitioners. And when I say practitioners, I mean the people who are actually writing code, designing hardware, and implementing the systems that we use in society. And of course, having those members, we also have services and activities oriented towards them. Q is a publication outlet that is oriented towards practitioner interests, and in fact is the most popular content in the ACM digital library. So I encourage you to take a look at that. It's material that is really at the cutting edge of computing, cutting edge in the practice of computing, I should say, as opposed to the research of computing. Associated with this is a a new conference series called Applicative, which is providing practitioner-oriented networking and experience reports. So if you go into industry, then I think, and if you go into the practice, then I think that you still will find some very useful materials and activities that ACM will provide to you. I mentioned education as a second area of good works. Here, the activities revolve around developing, in a sense, the pipeline that brings new people into the community. And of course, we do that through education. And we also help developing countries to promote and develop educational materials that will help their countries and their regions join the computing community. So we volunteers are developing curricula, and in fact the latest version of this curriculum contains a whole set of example curriculum for particular modules that are extremely useful to professors. So if you go into the profession through the academic route, you have a lot of material available to you for free that you can use in your teaching. There's a conference series called Learning at Scale, which is born out of this interest in massive online education, but of course not necessarily massive and not necessarily online, but new paradigms, new ways of doing education. And certainly this is a concern as computing pervades our society. We need to educate a lot more people to understand what computing is about. A third area is the Computer Science Teachers Association. Here, the idea is that unless you start educating people about computing in the schools, they won't understand either the opportunities that they might be available to them or the technology they might even be using, even if they go into some other area of work or study. So the idea here is to help the school teachers to develop materials that they can use to educate people who are even in kindergarten, learn how to use computers, and more than that, appreciate what the computing thought process actually is. And you've probably heard the term computational thinking. This is really a huge contribution that computing has made to the rest of the world, in the sense that people who think about computation are providing a new way of attacking problems and approaching solutions. We partner with a lot of other organizations who are interested in advancing education. We are one of the founders of the Computer Science Education Week, which takes place in December every year. Interestingly, it's aligned with the birth date of Ada Lovelace. Ada Lovelace is acknowledged to be the first computer programmer, and we will be celebrating her 200th anniversary of her birth this year with a number of events around the world. You know, that's obviously something to take a look at. She was an amazing person. She was a scientist, a mathematician, an engineer who happened to be a woman. Code.org is probably also something you've heard. This is a way of bringing computing to the general public through engagement of individuals and giving them an experience with computers and programming. Okay, so society, the third major area. Here, obviously, you've been hearing, you can't go one day in the news without hearing about some issue that, in a sense, impinges upon computing or takes some knowledge of computing to even appreciate. There's, you know, the recent issue with VW, and this was an issue of software that was manipulating the results of tests installed in a computer that was in a car, okay? So you are computing people, you kind of understand what's going on here, just imagine what the general public is thinking. They have really no idea that there was software running in a car. And it's probably pretty scary to them that there's software that's operating their car. But these are the kind of things that, you know, we as professionals need to help society understand. And we do this through a number of mechanisms. One of them is a group called USACM. Another is EUACM. These are groups that are engaging with government policymakers to help them understand the implications and ramifications of computerization. We also see education and the insertion of computing education as a policy issue. You know, the way I like to think about it is if you add computing as a course to an undergrad to a school, you put it into a high school, what are you going to take out from the high school? Because the day is so packed already, and the curriculum is so packed already. In order to insert something new, you have to remove something, and that is a policy decision. And that's something that professionals like us can help policymakers think about. Ethics obviously is a big issue. One might ask the question, who was the programmer who programmed the VW module? Who is the programmer? Who was the programmer who put in the back door in various pieces of software that we use? And what were they thinking as professionals? Is there an ethics question there as professionals? And the Committee on Professional Ethics helps us think about that. Now, obviously, we're here to talk about broadening participation, really, and inclusion. And here we have ACM-W, we have the Coalition to Diversify Computing, and ACM also participates in the Grace Hopper celebration. Grace Hopper celebration brings together this year there'll be 12,000 participants. There was actually, the registration was cut off at 12,000, and there's a waiting list of people coming to celebrate women in computing. So, you know, I'm not going to spend more time on this because this is what you're here for, but just to let you know that ACM, as you can tell, is very involved with this issue. And ACM is something that is doing this around the world. Obviously, the main places where computing is happening right now is in North America, in Europe, in Asia, in North Asia and South Asia. And ACM is trying to understand how to empower the people in these regions to build their communities there. I'll focus just on ACM Europe for a minute, since that's where we are, that's where we live, and that's where we work. ACM Europe is meant to give voice to the members of ACM in Europe and to tailor the activities of ACM to the European context. Right? So not everything that ACM does makes sense everywhere. It needs to be specialized. And that's what the ACM Europe is meant to help do. ACM is a registered society, so it's an official society as far as Brussels is concerned, and that gives it the ability to engage with Brussels in conversations about things like research funding, trade agreements, and other such activities, education. There is an elected leadership. There was an election recently for the members of the council, which is the group body that organizes the volunteer activities. And this is very important because what this means is that the members of Europe get to choose who it is who is defining the activities that are taking place in Europe. What are these activities? Well, there are things like chapters and promoting chapter development. The chair of the Council of European Chapter Leaders is here. I saw him in the hotel. There's an education committee, which is a committee on European computing, which is looking at the question of what kind of education is available in Europe for young students interested in computing, and how can we promote that education. Right now what they're doing is a mapping exercise to figure out what education there even is in Europe around computing. And then I mentioned the policy group, which is EUACM. Of course, ACM-W Europe is a very important force in Europe for advancing women in computing, and we wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for the activities of the volunteers in ACM-W Europe, and of course I would like to thank them again for their huge efforts in this activity, but well beyond just womENcourage, lots of other important activities. So ACM is a healthy and vibrant organization. Membership is at an all-time high. Finances are sound. It's a viable, very viable organization. We have the ability to spend money on these kinds of good works. These things cost money. They don't bring in money, right? And people need to remember that when we do these things, it costs money, and that money needs to come from somewhere. So right now, ACM is able to generate a positive cash flow that is enabling it to do these good works. Programs and visibility are growing, but we are facing some deep issues, and these are things that I have been thinking about, that the ACM leadership has been thinking about, but I think it's something that we all need to think about. Revenue drives the engine of the society. Yes, we are publishing, yes, we are holding conferences, but in a sense, what these are doing beyond that is supporting these good works. You all know about open access. This is something which, in fact, is threatening the revenue stream of ACM. It's just a fact of life, and ACM needs to adjust to that and understand how to continue to fund its good works in a changing environment. And then I think, in some sense, the most important question, which is, what is the future of professional societies? What does it mean to be a member of a professional society or participate in a professional society? I think this is something that's changing in general. The young professionals are really rethinking what it means to belong to something, to volunteer, how they can decide to contribute their time. I think that young professionals do contribute their time, and they just contribute it in a different way and don't necessarily associate themselves, not necessarily associate themselves with their profession, but perhaps with their beliefs. And I think we need to understand what that means for our professional society, because as you saw, there is a role for it. It is the thing that does these good works. And without that professional society, it's not clear to me that those good works would get done and who would do them. So we need to engage with those deep issues as we go forward. So, thank you. I'm very, very pleased to be able to be here and welcome you, and I very much hope you enjoy the rest of the conference and this beautiful city. Thank you.